Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Mindful Contract Administrator, I warmly welcome you to today's session. Today is 20th of February 2021, and we are going to present you our first free webinar related to the Agenda 21, what we call as Agenda 21 for FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. I hope all of you can hear me and see me as well. And after a while, I'll be presenting the full screen so that you all will be able to see the full presentation in full screen mode. Right. There are a couple of things I wanted to tell you at the beginning. I would request all of you to remain silent and switch off your video, that it will be easier for everyone to capture with uninterrupted internet connection, right? And then if you have any question, you are free to unmute yourself and ask questions. However, I would prefer that we will wait till the end of the presentation and then ask the questions. And we are going 2 hours at a stretch, right? But after 1 hour, I'll be giving you a small break of 5 to 10 minutes, and then after that, we'll be commencing for the second hour, right? So let us start now. Agenda 21 for FIDIC Red Book 2017. This particular idea came into my mind in view of understanding the FIDIC Red Book, the new version, 2017 version, which has got 21 clauses, and this year is 2021. So I thought that it is synchronizing with an agenda which is the same number as it. So Agenda 21 basically stems from the most salient features of FIDIC Red Book 2021 pertaining to those clauses, 21 clauses, right? Just a little bit about myself. I know most of you know about me well. However, just to give you a very brief introduction about myself, I am Priyankanuan Karunaratne. I am a chartered quantity surveyor, and I am an MSc holder in quantity surveying, as well as a BSc holder in civil engineering, and a qualified expert witness. So that's about myself, a brief introduction, and let us move on to today's session with that, right? So what is Agenda 21? As you are seeing here, it is a very nice iceberg that you are seeing here, right? So if you consider all the changes in FIDIC Red Book 2017 version as an iceberg, you are seeing only the tip of the iceberg, which are the 21 salient changes in FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. Just to give you an insight about what FIDIC 2017 version is about, right? We have spent 18 years with FIDIC 1999 version, which is the Red Book that we are using, which is defined as the works designed by the employer, and there is an implied meaning within that means that the design is being done on behalf of the employer by an engineer which has been appointed, and the contractor is doing 99% in workmanship, right? So the contractor is doing 100% construction, and 99% of the design will be borne by the engineer, whereas there are very minor design details which can be accommodated by the contractor's work scope as well, right? So 21 salient changes in FIDIC Red Book does not mean that we are going to peruse, we are going to explore all the changes which is contained within FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. So this is about what is the framework that we are going to discuss, and what are the areas that we are going to ring fence when we discuss about those changes, right? So we are starting on an expedition today in identifying these changes between FIDIC 1999 Red Book and FIDIC 2017 Red Book. And with these guidelines, I hope you will be able to expand your horizons in identifying further changes, substantial amount of changes. Just to give you a little bit of a brief, the FIDIC Red Book 1999 version has got 60 odd pages, wherein FIDIC 2017 version Red Book has got 100 odd pages. So you can see from the number of pages also, it is a substantial change. It is more than 50% of the change as far as literally the number of words, the number of pages are concerned. However, we are going to discuss in depth about certain changes, and you will understand what it has been changed, the reasons for changes as well, right? So, even though the Agenda 21 was planned to be planned to be accommodating all the 21 changes, when we rehearsed the timing, we realized the fact that the if you are going to explain all the changes pertaining to 21 clauses in FIDIC Red Book, it will take a lot of time, right? So, therefore, it would have been more useful in order to subdivide that into two sessions. So today is the day one, which we are going to discuss about the first 10 clauses, the most salient changes which has occurred in the first 10 clauses of FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, right? So in another day, the same batch will be accommodated into another session, wherein clause 11 up to clause 21 will be explained to you, right? So as you can see here on your right hand side, it unfolds with the clause 1, which where I'm going to discuss about unforeseeability, right? That is an attribute which has been introduced from FIDIC 1999 version onwards, and we are going to discuss about what is the change, what are the repercussions of unforeseeability. And then we are going to move into the employer's assistance in the under the clause 2. And furthermore, we are going to dig deep into the engineer's representative. As you are aware, 30 years back, when FIDIC 1987 version was introduced, the engineer's representative was existing, and all of a sudden he has vanished. Okay, FIDIC 1999 version did not incorporate an engineer's representative, and all of a sudden in 2017 version we reintroduced the engineer's representative. And under clause 4, there is something called employer supplied materials, which was called as free issue materials in under the FIDIC 1999 version. So we are going to discuss about what made this terminology change and what are the other ancillary changes associated with this particular change. And when we are moving on to clause 5, you know that whenever there is a nominated subcontractor who will be appointed by the employer under FIDIC terminology, normally the contractor has a right to object. Contractor has a right to object. So this objection to nomination clause, the sub clause, has now been modified in order to accommodate certain rights of the employer as well, right? So it has been becoming a balanced document with the insertion of those modifications in the objection to nomination clause, right? Then we move on to clause 6, wherein a fresh person, a fresh set of people who are called key personnel have been introduced in FIDIC 2017 version. And I'm happy to say that the key personnel, even though they have been in existence for a longer period of time, now FIDIC has given a defined term. They have given a value to this key personnel, right? Then we will move on to clause 7, the manner of execution, right? The contractor's manner of execution has been revisited and revamped in order to suit the problems which has been encountered by the contract administrators within the market. And another major change, a big jump, which is called the concurrent delay. If you find, if you peruse through FIDIC 1999 version and the previous versions, we were just walking in the dark, and we did not know where we have to stop when there is a concurrent delay. Now the insertion of the concurrent delay clause within the extension of time subclause, we have been enlightened to a greater extent than the previous versions of FIDIC Red Book. Then we will move on to these tests on completion, and there are certain changes which has occurred in 2017 version, as well as the clause 10, the taking over by parts. We all know the taking over by parts has been signified by two different scenarios. First one is called as the sectional completion, and then the second one is called as the partial completion, right? So we are going to discuss about all these things today. So this is the little bit of a narrative about what we are going to discuss, right? Unforeseeability, right? If you go to the defined term unforeseeable, right, within the FIDIC Red Book 1999 version, it says unforeseeable means not reasonably foreseeable by an experienced contractor. Let me stop there, right? Now, whenever somebody cannot foresee what is going to happen in the future, we call it as a risk, right? We consider this as a risk, and the word risk has been redefined within the current context. Risk is not only a threat, risk may be an opportunity as well. So sometimes the unforeseeability, when you address the unforeseeability, you may be able to find the opportunities pertaining to this particular word called unforeseeability, right? However, every unforeseeable situation has to be time bound. As you are aware, you cannot say it is infinite, right? So therefore, the FIDIC Red Book 1999 version has used a particular time frame, which is called the date of submission of the tender, in order to ascertain that unforeseeability concept stops by that particular date. Because as you all are aware, when you are submitting a tender, after submission of the tender, if there is anything change, there is no way that the contractor can accommodate that change within the tender itself. However, after 18 years of learning experience, 18 years of usage, FIDIC identified there is something wrong within the timeline that they have incorporated within this particular defined term called unforeseeable. As you can see here, the new Red Book, which was issued in 2017, says unforeseeable means not reasonably foreseeable by an experienced contractor by the base date. So what exactly is the base date? There is not much change in this particular part of this particular chart. This is the project flow chart. Let me call it as project flow chart, because which clearly says what exactly is the timeline related to a project. Right? So when you're talking about a timeline related to a project, you can understand it starts from issue of the tender documents and it ends from the return of the performance security subject to a particular subclause. So this is the span of a project from the issue of the tender documents upon completion of the performance of the contractor after the defects notification period. Now, let us once again look back what we have spoken about the timeline pertaining to the unforeseeability. The FIDIC 1999 Red Book says it is by the date of submission of the tender. FIDIC 2017 version says it is by the base date. So what is the correct version? As you can see here, throughout this presentation, I'll be using two different colors. I'll be using red color for the FIDIC 1999 version and the earlier versions, okay? And I'll be using the green color related to FIDIC 2017 version, right? So you can, as you can see here in this project timeline, right? The by the base date, you will be able to see what exactly is when you are moving in these two, when you are moving these two arrows. What you can see is the FIDIC 1999 Red Book signified that the contractor can foresee this up to the submission of the tender. But FIDIC 2017 version said, no, you have to stop by the base date. So this is exactly what has happened in the advent of the FIDIC 2017 version. Now, if you are going back to the history, the introduction of the base date, has got a certain sense. What does that mean? Everybody, any tenderer who is submitting a tender cannot recognize all the changes just before submitting the tender. So there should be a certain time period. This is what we called in normal common jargon as drawing a line. Okay, we draw a line at that particular point, right? You might have seen that if somebody is stepping into your shoes, if a situation is going to go beyond your control, you draw a line. You call it drawing a line. So this drawing of the line has been changed from the submission of the tender to the base date. So that means the contractor or the tenderer who is pricing this particular document should have a sigh of relief by a particular date, because normally when you are submitting a tender, you should not take into account the changes which occurred at the 11th hour, because it is prone to number one, it may be prone to incorrect judgments. Number two, it may be not giving a fair chance to all the tenderers. For example, if a tenderer does not have a lot of in-house departments of his own, if a tenderer does not have a lot of specialized services of his own, that particular tenderer may be depending upon a subcontractor, may be depending upon an outsourced party. So if the client or the employer changes something at the 11th hour, just before the submission of the tender, the contractor, the contractors who do not have that substantial facility or the flexibility may go wrong, may be unfairly treated. That is why the base date has been now changed. The unforeseeability, the defined term unforeseeability has been changed as which is unforeseeable by an experienced contractor at the base date. Now, let us understand what you can see on your left hand side top is one side you are saying do not enter, and the other side you are saying enter only, right? So this will create a confusion. This will create a question mark on the reader. So likewise, you can see whilst FIDIC 1999 Red Book says unforeseeable means not reasonably foreseeable by an experienced contractor by the date of submission of the tender, there are clauses within FIDIC 1999 which says if there is anything which has been made after the base date, you should not take that into account. So that is a contradiction, a big cross. As you can see here, the subclause 13.7 under FIDIC 1999 Red Book, it talks about adjustments for changes in legislation. And it says clearly, if there is any law which has been changed after the base date, right, the contractor is affected by that particular legislation change. Please draw your attention to these A and B. He is eligible for an extension of time. He is eligible for additional cost, which shall be included in the contract price. Therefore, you can clearly see this anomaly needed to be corrected, and FIDIC has recognized that and then ironed it out perfectly. Right. Now let us move on to the second clause. Assistance is a word which is given in FIDIC Red Book in a very subjective format. An assistance can be given by containing to the particular wording which is contained within that standard form of contract, or the assistance can be given wholeheartedly without limits, without boundaries, right? However, in the current market, when we are facing the current market, you know that the resources are limited. The We have certain restrictions pertaining to the resources that we are providing. Therefore, because of this scarcity, even though you are wholeheartedly willing to help someone, you have certain restrictions, you have certain boundaries. That is why a contract, a standard form of contract, is in existence in order for you to identify your limit, identify your boundary, and then move forward, right? Whenever you are having the employer's assistance, it talks about a person, a party to the contract, who can give another party to the contract a helping hand. This is what we call as collaborative approach. This is what in 1994 Sir Latham, right, has identified. Sir Michael Latham in 1994, when he issued his report called the Latham's report, he clearly identified there needs to be a collaborative approach between the parties to the contract in order to succeed together. That is one of the utmost important points in the history of the contract administration, and it became a turning point to popularize what is known as the new engineering contract, the NEC, which the people captured, the people wholeheartedly accepted as collaborative approach. So what is wrong with FIDIC? There is nothing wrong with FIDIC, but the way the people who are admitting, the way the people who are comprehending is going to be a question mark in certain situations. Let us understand one such important example in this particular scenario. So, as you are aware, FIDIC Red Book 1999 and 2017 version, both of them have recognized and reconciled employers employers' rights and obligations under clause 2. However, the employer's assistance which will be given to the contractor has to be specific, unambiguous, and binding. So I'm using my very old technique which we call as sub. Okay? Specific, unambiguous, and binding, right, needs to be understood whenever we are reading a clause pertaining to this particular uh, standard form of contract that we are going to use. Now, the clause 2 of FIDIC Red Book, as you can see here, as I have told you, the color coding has been adhered to when you are using the FIDIC 1999 version and 2017 version. I will give you a little bit of a narrative about what has happened here. As you can see here, you might have been worried what happened to the employer's claims, which was contained within the FIDIC 1999 version, and it is not in clause 2. Do not worry, it has now been included under the clause 21, that is, employers and contractors' claim have been clubbed together, right? So that is one of the changes, but we are not going to talk about that particular change. What I am going to talk about is the assistance which will be given by the employer under FIDIC 2017 version, the Red Book. And as you can see here, the wording itself has been changed. Previously, it was called as permits, licenses, or approvals, and now it has been changed as the assistance. And there are certain other changes, as you can see here as well. We will be discussing about some of them in the latter part of this particular presentation. As you can see, the employer's supplied materials and employer's equipment have been inserted within FIDIC 2017 version as well. Now, employer's assistance. What you can see on your left hand side is the subclause 2.2 of FIDIC 1999 version. What you can see on your right hand side is the counterpart of that particular subclause when it comes to the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, right? So let us understand what exactly is the change. In the first line itself, you can see the FIDIC 1999 version says, the employer shall, where he is in a position to do so. So within brackets, he say, where he is in a position to do so. And if you see the FIDIC 2017 version, it says, if requested by the contractor, the employer shall promptly provide, right? So if you go further down on this context, you can easily identify the core sense of the subclause has not been changed. He has to obtain copies of the laws of the country and he has to give it to the contractor, right? He has to get the applications. If there are certain applications which has been made by the contractor, the employer has to give necessary support. But this particular phrase, which is called where he is in a position to do so, has created an ambiguity. Let us understand why. You may be wondering why I am using a cat in this particular picture, right? A cat likes to sleep a lot, isn't it? Right? So I am not saying employer is like a cat. Okay, so don't get me wrong in this regard. However, I use the particular animal in order to identify certain attributes pertaining to the excuses a person can give in this regard. When you are saying the employer shall, where he is in a position to do so, there is a question which may come into my mind. Do I have the capacity? Do I have the authority or do I have the time? Okay, so it is common, it is human nature for a person to understand, okay, I am in a position to do so, but do I have the capacity? But do I have the authority or do I have the time? It is like when somebody is asking something from you, right? If somebody is, if somebody wants you to give certain attributes, give certain things to that particular person, give certain facilities. You might be thinking whether I have that particular capacity. Let's say somebody asks for you to explain something to him, right? Now, for example, if somebody asks me to explain something about law or marketing, I am not the right person to explain because I am not a lawyer or a marketeer. So I specialize in a different area, right? Therefore, that is the capacity that we are talking about. Do I have the authority? Now, for example, you know that if you are looking into a particular chartered engineer, let's say you are a chartered engineer, you know, a chartered engineer is having certain authorities in order to sign certain documents. A chartered architect has the same authority. But if you are not a chartered engineer or if you are not a chartered architect, you may not have certain privileges as such. So the question which will come into your mind is, do I have the authority? And then once again, if you're flooded with a lot of other works, if you're flooded with a lot of projects, right? Then the question which will come into your mind is, do I have the time? So capacity, authority, and time, which is abbreviated as the CAT, okay, will come into the employer. And if you are talking in the sense of the bona fide contract, that means you're wholeheartedly doing that one, even though that wholehearted action may have this particular question. Therefore, where he is in a position to do so has been judged by the FIDIC, drafted as a very subjective term. Now, let us go back to that particular clause which I am explaining. Then it says the two questions came into the mind. Number one, do we need to provide the assistance to the contractor if he doesn't need that? Now you can see on your left hand side, it says the employer shall provide. If you forget about what is within the brackets, it says it is contractually obligatory for the employer to provide that particular assistance. But when you look into the other side, on the right hand side, you can clearly see, if requested by the contractor, the employer shall promptly provide. So it is discretional by the part of the contractor to ask for assistance. Otherwise, your efforts will be wasted from the sustainability point of view. Let me give you a typical example. In the context of Oman, we have a port called Soha Port, right? So a Soha port, there are a lot of materials, a lot of machinery which comes through the Soha port, right? Sometimes, in order to get the clearance of these materials which are reaching the Soha port, will be little taking little bit of a time. But if there is any sort of an intervention from the employer's part, if he or she is a government organization, sometimes you can expedite things, right? But if the contractor is able to get that particular facility at the right time or the within reasonable time, there is no requirement for the contractor to ask for the employer's assistance. The employer has got other fish to fry. Employer has got a lot of things to do. So it signifies that if the contractor cannot go beyond his limits. Now we all know that if a child is being given a particular task to do, we normally do not we normally do not teach him or her from the scratch. We ask that particular child to attempt once or twice, isn't it? Right? Even in teaching, this practice has been done in order to get the maximum out of that particular child, in order to ascertain whether or not that particular child has captured or comprehended what has been taught to him or her. So therefore, it says if clause. This particular subclause starts from the word if. That means if the contractor is unable to get this particular assistance, if he doesn't have that particular facility, he may go to the uh, uh, employer's assistance. This is what is exactly about this employer's assistance thing, right? Now let us move on to the clause 3. Reintroduction of engineers representative. As you are aware, it was a very familiar term 30 years back. I will come into that one separately also. If you remember FIDIC 1987 and the earlier versions, on your left hand side, the subclause 2.2 says the engineer's representative shall be appointed by and be responsible to the representative engineer, and shall carry out such duties and exercise such authority as may be delegated to him by the engineer. Now let us move on to the particular clause 3, right? Before going into this particular clause 3, I have to tell you that there is a new subclause. Subclause 3.3 has been introduced by FIDIC 2017 version with the insertion of the engineer's representative. Now, having looked at that, if you go into the particular clause called the engineer, you can see on your left hand side there are 5 subclauses contained within FIDIC 1999 Red Book. On your right hand side, you will see 8 subclauses within FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. I will give you a little bit of an insight about why this change has happened, right? FIDIC 2017 version, the subclauses 3.1 and 3.2, both if you club together, you can understand it is the same sense which has been given by the subclause 3.1 of the FIDIC 1999 version. However, the delegation by the engineer has been switched to 3.4 with the insertion of the engineer's representative subclause. And the engineer's instructions, there's a slight change in the name. Instructions of the engineer has become engineer's instructions, and the replacement of the engineer remains the same. And the agreement or determination is a new insertion of a word called agreement as opposed to determinations, which is contained within the 1999 version of the FIDIC Red Book. And there is something called meetings, which has recently been introduced. Now, I will tell you a little bit of a insight about what is exactly meant by these meetings. You know that there is an inclusion of a new subclause called advance warning in the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. So, with the insertion of this advance warning subclause, which is once again a collaborative approach, the advance warning provision talks about meetings. It refers to this particular subclause. The advance warning clause is a collaborative approach in the identification of risks and mitigating those risks as a joint effort, as a team, right? So those meetings serve the purpose of discussing, comprehending, and giving answers to those problems that you may encounter within these advanced warnings. Notwithstanding to that, these meetings may be spanning beyond the particular requirement of an advance warning. There may be certain other requirements to have meetings as well. So therefore, FIDIC convened all these requirements and inserted a new subclause called meetings, right? In 30 years back, FIDIC recognized there is someone called the engineer's representative, and he has been delegated. You know what delegation means. Now, for example, if you are a project manager or if you are a commercial manager, you delegate certain tasks of you. Now, the most common example would be if you are a senior quantity surveyor who is compiling a payment application on behalf of your organization, you will ask your quantity surveyors to do certain tasks, isn't it? You ask one of your quantity surveyors to do a valuation, go to the site, do the measurements, and take them down and prepare what exactly has been done. And you ask the other quantity surveyor to go to the site and check what are the materials which are available at site, and another quantity surveyor may be assigned to take into account about the variations which has been occurring at the site. Similarly, if you are a consultant quantity surveyor, when you are preparing cost reports or the financial reports, you may assign quantity surveyor to look into the variations in terms of the instructions which has already been issued and the instructions which may be issued in the future as well. So those things are called delegating your tasks. But at the end of the day, it is your responsibility as the senior quantity surveyor to compile everything together and then prepare the final report, right? So likewise, the engineer's representative has become an assistant to the engineer. The engineer may appoint the engineer's representative, and then it talks about the same thing which the FIDIC Red Book 2018, 1987 version was talking about. And please draw your attention to this green colored portion, which says if the engineer's representative is to be temporarily absent from the site. Now it talks finer details. It talks further details about what is going to happen, right? During the execution of the works, an equivalently qualified, experienced, and competent replacement shall be appointed by the engineer, right? And the contractor shall be given a notice of such replacement. So this strengthened the contractor's ability, the contractor's requirement to question what has happened to the engineer's representative. Likewise, this particular subclause has been expanded and in a more detailed manner, it has been presented in order for better administration of the project. Now, see, one of the drawbacks, or uh, one of the downsides of this argument about new FIDIC Red Book is it says, if you see a lot of articles which has been written, it says it gives an extra burden, extra managerial burden to the contractor. and the employer. Anyway, we are too early to discuss about that as well. Maybe it will be reflected. Now if you are saying that similar projects, we are always doing what is called benchmarking, right? Suppose that you have a hotel project. Let's say you wanted to build a five-star hotel, right? In a similar time period, if somebody is using FIDIC Red Book 1999 version and FIDIC Red Book 2017 versions, from the preliminaries portion, you will be able to identify, because we all know in a preliminaries portion of a particular bill of quantity, there is a portion in order to price for each and every clause, which may be affecting the contractor's pricing. So it is an interesting thing to see how the contractors who have priced for a five-star hotel uh, sometimes back, when he is being given something which is very similar to that one, right? No projects are same, that you all know, due to the bespoke nature of the construction industry. No two projects are the same. There may be differences. There will be differences, but at least you can have a guideline about benchmarking all these two things together, right? So this is all about the inclusion about the engineers representative, right? I just wanted to know from one of you whether you are hearing me well and whether my pace is okay. Let me check with the first person I'm seeing in on my screen. Pirasat, are you okay with the pace of my delivery, and can you hear me well?
Yes, sir. Good.
Thank you so much. Right, let me ask from another gentleman or someone. Said, Pramod, can you hear me well and my pace is okay for you?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for the feedback. For from time to time, I will be asking from you whether, because I have to tell you that when you are doing an online session, I don't have that privilege to look into your body language, whether you are whether you are capturing everything which I am saying, or whether this session is interesting or boring. I need to understand that one. But the good thing about this is you are relaxing at your home, and I am relaxing at my home, and we can leisurely go through this particular session. Good. Let us continue now. Coming back to clause 4, that is the free issue materials or employer supplied materials, right? I will let you know why the terminology has been changed. Now, when you're talking about employer supplied material or free issue material, right? We need to talk about the details of those materials. We need to talk about the times of these delivery of these particular material, and what sort of arrangements the employer has made in order to deliver these materials, or to execute these materials, and what are the rates and prices concerning these materials, right? As you are aware, whenever there is a PC rate which is being included, which we call this as a prime cost rate, right? What the employer says to the contractor is, Mr. Contractor, at the time of tendering, okay? What you are saying is, Mr. Contractor, I will provide this particular marble at a price of, let's say, 40 reals per square meter, which is too high. Let me say 10 reals per square meter, right? Reals, in the sense, in Sri Lankan rupees, you have to multiply it by 500. If in Indian rupees, I think you need to multiply it at least by 250 or something like something very, very similar to that. So when I'm talking about reals, these are Omani reals which I'm talking, right? So when you are saying that, when you are putting a PC rate within a BOQ, within brackets, you are saying that PC rate for this particular marble is 10 reals per square meter. That means the consider that this particular marble can be bought in the market at 10 reals, and please price, you're asking the contractor to price by insertion of all the labor and overheads and profits into that particular material, right? So whenever you are doing an employee supplied material, or in the FIDIC earlier version, which we call as the free issue material, We have to provide these parameters, we have to provide these details, but not limited to. There may be certain other cases as well, right? I have picked some of the most important aspects or attributes, such as details, times, arrangements, rates, and prices, right? Clause 4 might have been the most juggled, okay, or most played around clause within FIDIC 2017 version, right? You can see from the subclause 4.4 onwards, there are a lot of reds and a lot of greens, and I'm not going to talk about all these things today, right? The only thing which I have to tell you is, right, the only thing which I have to tell you is the people have gone through this particular subclauses in a very detailed manner, and I can understand from the wording itself that the input which has been given by the contract administrators in redrafting the FIDIC Red Book is immense, is substantial, and it is very, very detailed. That's what I can tell you. Now, for example, you might be wondering why the subcontractors has been taken out from this particular area, but you will see within the next clause that subcontractors subclause has already been there. So they juggled, okay, they swapped certain subclauses. However, some of the places they have got these particular things as well, except for few, such as the advance warning provision, the the engineer's representative provision. Those things are new insertions in FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. So adhering to these color coding that I am explaining here, right? The red portions, what you are seeing here is the portions which is related to the FIDIC 1999 red book, right? The green colored ones are the applicable clauses, not the applicable clauses, the corresponding number, because you can see, for instance, 4.19 or 4.20, you can see that the FIDIC 1999 version used the field 4.20 as employee equipment and free issue material. However, the newer version, it talks about progress reports, right? So there are certain changes as such that you can see here, right? Anyway, what I can say is related to the contractor, most of the sub clauses are there, but we are going to talk about something which is important related to employers equipment and free issue material, right? Employers equipment has been a defined term in FIDIC 1999 version, and it talks about apparatus, machinery, and vehicles, right? But you can see here the insertion of the new term such as equipment within FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, right? And the things like the construction plant, right? The construction plant is not the same constructional plant that you see within the Oman White Book or FIDIC 1977 version. Okay, that I have to tell you. The normal sense of labor material plant came into the common language, common usage, common jargon with that insertion of the word constructional plant in 1977 version and Oman White Book 1981 version. And then subsequently, FIDIC 1987 and newer versions have introduced something called contractors equipment in place of the word constructional plant. So the plant is meant for something else in FIDIC newer versions. So please do not mix those things together. Contractors equipment means the vehicles, apparatus, equipment, and all these things which is owned by the contractor, which is required for the execution of the works. But the word plant, which starts from capital P, which we will be discussing further down in this particular presentation, the plant, the word plant with the capital P is meant to be for something like a chiller plant, something like a generator, right? Which is a permanent work which forms part of the works. So please understand that particular difference. Anyway, the employer's equipment, the defined term employer's equipment has been revisited and revamped within the new FIDIC Red Book. That is why they have inserted certain items. Now, but the bigger change is the word free issue material has now been supplanted with the word employer supplied materials. There is a hyphen between that one, between these two, because the free issue material was never uh, defined term, but the employer supplied material is a defined term, right? And it is not that much of a difference, but those clauses have been changed. Now, if you can see, what you're seeing on your left hand side is the subclause 4.20, right? Paragraphs 3 and 4, right? Which says that the employer shall supply free of charge free issue materials and all these things. And look at the red portion, it says at the time and place specified in the contract. But if you are referring to the similar terminology which is being given, it says the employer supply materials, it says details, times, arrangements, rates, and prices stated in the specification. Now you can see the earlier version of FIDIC was talking about the time and place specified in the contract. It never spoke about the refined term called specification, but FIDIC 2017 version has been more focused about only an element of the contract. We all know the word contract, which starts from capital C, is the bundle of document which together forms the contract, isn't it? It is the rules and regulations. It is the Bible. It is the Bhagavad Gita. It is the Quran. Or it is Tripitaka, something like that. It is the contract which says the rules and regulations pertaining to how to administer this particular contract, isn't it? Right? However, FIDIC identified if the contractor is to peruse throughout the document of the contract, it will be a little bit of a time consuming and confusing task, isn't it? So FIDIC identified that it needs to be included only within the specification, right? Even though the bills of quantities talks about the rates, we all know the difference between specification, drawing, and the bills of quantities. Specification says how to do the works, drawing says what to do. The BOQ is a guidance document in order for the contractor to price these works. Okay, therefore, it says more specifically, in a more refined way, a more focused way, details, times, arrangements, rates, and prices stated in the specification. So when you go into the first part, which I have told you, it talks about the details, it talks about the times, it talks about the arrangements, rates, and prices. So please keep in your mind, there is no something called free issue materials in the first place now. Now, actually, the word free issue materials also is little bit misleading, isn't it? Right? It is not actually free issue materials in technical terminology, technical jargon, right? Uh, Somebody has to bear the cost of that, right? Employer supplied materials is more specific. It says it who is the originator, who is the provider, right, of these particular materials. So this is what the change related to that particular clause. Now let us move on to the clause 5. So we are in the middle. Once we finish that one, we have already spent 53 minutes as of now. So we are on target in completing the 10 sub clauses. For those who are joining a little late, I have explained in the beginning that even though Agenda 21 was supposed to be addressing 21 salient features of a contract of FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, When we rehearsed the timing, the mindful contract administrator rehearsed the timing, and then we realized the fact that you cannot accommodate all these changes within a 2 hour session. So rather than rushing through by looking at the watch and wasting our valuable time, we thought we will discuss in more detail first 10 clauses within today, and in the next few days to come or next weeks to come, we'll be doing a continuation of this particular free webinar so that you will be enlightened with 4 hours rather than 2 hours. Just to remind you, since I explained this to you, if you are a chartered quantity surveyor or a chartered engineer or a person who is planning to record your session, record your CPD hours, you can consider this particular session as an official 2 hour session the related to your CPD hours. So that is a good thing that I have to tell you, right? So the clause 5, objection to nomination, right? So normally, when you object to something, right, you have to have grounds to say that you're objecting to this particular thing. You need to have facts. And these facts need to be uh, reinforced with details. It cannot be just a superficial facts. You need to have some underlying evidence, a strong set of evidence, which will not give any sort of an unfairness to the person who is being rejected. So the clause 5 has got a sub clause which is called objection to nomination, the contractor's objection to nomination. Notwithstanding to this, I have to tell you within the next session, we'll be talking about that as well. The contractor has the objection for the variations as well, right? So likewise, objection to nomination is also another very important aspect and tribute by the contractor, because you have to say, Mr. Engineer, you are not always right. There are certain circumstances, there are certain situations where the contractor will be in trouble if you take a particular decision. That is also part of a collaborative approach, because contractor has been given the opportunity, the contractor has been given the opportunity to opine about this particular change, right? And it says clause 5, objection to nomination: insufficient competence, resources, and financial strength. Okay, if there is a nominated subcontract, okay, let me put a comma here. Normally we do have three types of subcontractors in a construction project. One is called the nominated subcontractor. The other one is called the named subcontractor. And the third person is called the domestic subcontractor. Nominated subcontractors are the specialist subcontractors who have been allocated or contained within what is called as the provisional sums. Provisional sums under FIDIC terminology says you can appoint specialist subcontractors. It is not the only purpose of the provisional sums. It is uh, one of the purposes of the allocating of provisional sums, the nomination of subcontractors, specialist subcontractors or suppliers can also be there, right? The next one is called the named subcontractors or named suppliers. Even though most of the tender laws, now for example, Oman tender law, it does not uh, it does not give room for the contractors to put the clients or the employers to insert the names, trade names, or named subcontractors, because in the eyes of the law, we need to give equal opportunities to all, right? But normally when you are having a private client, that particular restriction is not there. And sometimes naming a particular subcontractor will be useful, right? Because that particular client or the employer might be having more experience with this particular named supplier or subcontractor. Because now, for example, now there are off the shelf off-the-shelf scaffolding or off-the-shelf type of a shuttering which is available in the market, right? There are a lot of reputed suppliers as such, and you know that the finishes have been given in a very higher standard, in this regard. So nominating such a person, such a organization will eliminate the different quality standards, which will streamline a particular quality standard. So that is something which we needed to understand when you're talking about a named subcontractor. Domestic subcontractor is totally under the purview of the contractor, subject to certain stipulations within the specification, wherein that particular nominated subcontractor, sorry, the domestic subcontractor's products or his workmanship has to be approved by the engineer, but it is the sole discretion of the contractor to do that part, right? So coming back to this objection to nomination, it signifies insufficient competence, resources, and financial strength, assurance of indemnification against negligence, obligations, and liabilities. Now, you can see objection to nomination is not a new term which has been included within FIDIC 2017 version. As you can see here, FIDIC 1999 version, right? FIDIC 1999 version has got only one particular heading, that is called nominated subcontractors. But if you go to FIDIC 2017 version, you can see it has been subdivided into the subcontractors and nominated subcontractors. So under nominated subcontractors, this particular objection to nomination is there. Now, I have picked a very, very specific term which has been given in this under this objection to nomination. As you can see here, most of the stuff which is contained within this particular two sides, the FIDIC 1999 version and FIDIC 2017 version, are the same, right? So I don't want to waste your time by reading through all these things, but I will pick something which is very important to you. If you read the lines, between the lines, within the 1999 version of FIDIC, it says the contractor shall not be under any obligation to employ a nominated subcontractor, against whom the contractor raises reasonable objection. The word reasonable objection is there within both the versions. By notice to the engineer as soon as practicable, right? Then it says with supporting particulars. This is where I'm going to stop. And I'm going to look into the 2017 version, which says the same thing, but when you follow the green colored portion of this particular subclause, it says detailed supporting particulars. So it adds another adjective called detailed. It's not just supporting particulars, it says detailed supporting particulars, and it adds no later than 14 days after receiving the engineer's instruction. So let me tell you a little bit of a story about this thing. When this concept of mindful contract administration came into my mind, I was talking about three spheres of mindful contract administration, which is called mindful control, mindful coordination, and mindful adaptation. So when you're talking about mindful control, okay, mindful control is like you're controlling a ship through the ropes. Okay, so the word rope is consisting of R, O, P, and E. The R signifies the responsibilities. O signifies the obligations. P signifies the penalties. And E, the last term, signifies the efficiency. Now you can see when you insert 14 days within this particular subclause, you have cultivated the habit of efficiency within that particular mindful control of the contract. So wherever you see the additional dates, you can see a lot of occurrences in FIDIC 2017 version wherein this time specific, I'm not using the word time barred, Time barred is a different sense. Okay. Time specific. Time specific inclusions are there in the new Red Book 2017 version in a higher scale than its previous versions. In order to cultivate or in order to motivate the stakeholders of the project, in order to adhere to specific timeline. That is why it says no later than 14 days after receiving the engineer's instruction. So it has cultivated the E in that particular rope, which I have told you. Right. Okay. Coming back to the subject, let us understand a particular typical letter which will be sent by a contractor. Okay. For the objection to nomination. The contractor may start saying, Mrs. ABC engineers, subject, objection to nomination of Mrs. DEF. So assume that the consulting engineer of this particular project is called ABC engineers. And the nominated subcontractor has been appointed via an instruction by the engineer called Messrs. DEF, right? And then it goes, it says, dear sir, this is to notify you that pursuant to subclause 5.2.2, I'm talking about FIDIC 2017 version, of the standard conditions of contract, we object to your nomination of Messrs. DEF owing to following. Now see the red version, that is FIDIC 1999 version. Messrs. DEF subcontractors have failed to deliver their scope of work. Let me cut this particular word, subcontractors. Messrs. DEF have failed to deliver their scope of works in project A and project B as per the agreed program by months. Okay, so when you're talking about supporting particulars, he may be attaching a particular letter which has been issued by the this contractor saying, right, Mr. Mrs. DEF, you have failed to abide by this particular program, right? However, there is a more detailed way that you can look into this one. Messrs. DEF subcontractors have failed to deliver their scope of works in the following projects. Project A, Messrs. DEF acted as our MEP subcontractor, and there was a delay of 2 months in the critical part due to their culpability. Refer attached critical path analysis. And then project B, it says Messrs. DEF has abandoned, right, the site on 1st January 2021. Refer to attached letter. Now, the second version, which is marked in green, cultivates detailed supporting particulars. The first version cultivates the detailed, the supporting particulars only. It is not the detailed supporting particulars. So this is the difference between the FIDIC Red Book 1999 version expectation and FIDIC 2017 version expectation, because you can hang into a particular word as well, right? Detailed supporting particular means it has got a very an extra mile to travel by the contractor to prove something which may not be an unfair situation to the nominated subcontractor, right? Sometimes in the first place, when you are saying that because of this particular MEP subcontractor the project has failed, maybe that may be not due to their own failure, and that particular delay might not have been within the critical path as well. So it is something like the transparency that we are showcasing in order to cultivate the habit of the more detailed versions, right? So this is what the objection to nomination comes into play. So with that, this is we are coming into the first break of, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes. Please do not log out from the system, right? You can remain within the system as it is, and then after 2 to 3 minutes time, we'll be once again continuing with the session. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to the second session of this Agenda 21 for FIDIC Red Book 2017 version. This is for the benefit of the users of FIDIC Red Book who will be practicing this in very near future. Still, the FIDIC is going through the some learning process pertaining to this FIDIC 2017 usage, and soon it will come into practice. And it is good that we all are enlightened with this particular session. So, in view of achieving that particular target, the Mindful and Contract Administrator decided to do a series of free webinars on monthly basis, and this is the first of the same, right? So let us continue with the session today, right? Then it comes to this particular clause called the key personnel, right? Now, in the previous versions of FIDIC, before the advent of this particular version, FIDIC 2017 version, uh, we have been using key personnel, isn't it? Right? We all know who the key personnel are. Now, the requirement of key personnel are revolving around five spheres. There may be more, right? However, the most substantial or most, let me say, most significant five spheres are the program management, the cost management, the quality management, the risk management, and the safety management. Now you can see from the inclusion of the words program management, cost management, and quality management, I have addressed the iron triangle, which is called time, cost, and quality, or triple constraints that we encounter within a project, right? With the insertion of the risk management and the safety management, it has further been strengthened because the risk management has got two different elements, right? Number one is the risk management in the program perspective. The other one is the risk management in the cost perspective. And the safety is everyone's concern. That is one of the prime concerns. So think about the sites that you are working on. Think about a site, hypothetically, think about a site that you are working. You know that there is a person which is called project controls manager. He is the owner of the program. I'm talking about the contractors people, right? Then the cost management, there is a person called the commercial manager. In certain organization, we use the word contracts manager as well, right? Right. Then there is a person who is taking care of the quality aspect of that one. We call him the quality manager. And mostly the risk manager is not there within this part of the world, but this is a profession which is mushrooming, which is now growing in certain parts of the world. Now, for example, certain reputed consultancy firms, they have got risk managers, risk engineers, right? So normally the risk management part will be done by the project manager or the construction manager of a project. However, the risk management is also characterized by something called the risk management register, isn't it? Now, you know, when you're talking about risk management, if you are a quantity surveyor who has already used the NRM1 or NRM2, that is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, has issued the new rules of measurement, which has got 3 volumes. The first or second volume, even the third volume, they talk about 4 types of risks. Number one is called the design development risks. Number two is called the construction risks. Number three is called the employer change risks. Number four is called the employer other risks. Okay, so likewise, we have to manage the risk as well. So there should be someone who is there, maybe the project manager or the construction manager. And then you're talking about safety management. Now, certain organizations within Oman, they adopt certain terminology such as HEMP, Health and Environment Management Plan, or we call it HSC plan. Okay, health, safety, and environment management. You have got a particular plan which is being introduced within certain contract administration procedures. Now, in the UK terminology, we call this a project execution plan. Now, if you refer to RICS documents or any other professional body like AIQS or IQSSL, you might be facing these particular terminology, such as project execution plan is the same thing that we are using in this part of the world as the contract administration procedures. Okay, there is a small book that will be issued, uh, which will be useful for the proper administration, the robust administration of the contract after it is being awarded to a particular contract. So, looking at these particular five spheres, now you can understand there should be a person, key person called the project controls manager. There should be a key person called the commercial manager or a quality manager, then the construction manager or a safety manager. So, what FIDIC has done was FIDIC has inserted a particular subclause called key personnel into this particular clause called staff and labor. Now you can see most of the other most of the other subclauses remain the same, but some of the subclauses you can see certain words have been added, right? Certain changes have been done. So it is not only confined to the title of that particular subclause, but also will be reflected within the text, reflected within the subclause content itself as well, right? Regarding this particular changes. So you can see the insertion of the subclause, which is called 6.12 key personnel, has now been inserted within the uh, particular red book provision, right? Now you can see the key personnel means the positions, if any, of the contractor's personnel other than the contractor's representative that are stated in the specification. Now, if you go into the definition of the contractor's representative, whom we erroneously call as the project manager, okay, because the word project manager is not available within FIDIC jargon, okay. The contractor's representative is the correct terminology for contractor's project manager. And you can see that there is a change within the FIDIC 1999 version and 2017 version. We inserted a new adjective called natural person. The word natural person is there within the definition of the contractor's personnel nowadays. Okay, those days it is not there. So what is the difference between a natural person and a person? A person can be a company, because you all know, before you came into this quantity surveying practice, the only engineers and architects that we knew were the individuals, isn't it? Right? They are not organizations that we knew. When we came into this particular industry, only we identified that there is an organization called the engineer, consulting engineer. There is an organization called architect, right? So likewise, you need to distinguish the difference between a person and a natural person. So with the insertion of the word natural person, the contractor's representative became a person who is like you and me, with skeletal, flesh and blood and skin. Okay. Therefore, the contractor's representative, the definition has now been equipped with the adjective called natural person. Okay. So once again, going back to this particular definition, it says this is a new insertion in FIDIC 2017 version, which was not there within 1999 version. Even though we are using this particular terminology within our day-to-day lives in most of our uh, prime documents, we call it the consultant quantity surveyors prepare a tender document. It has got four parts, isn't it? Prime document, specification, drawings, and the BOQ part, right? So within the prime document, mostly what you are normally doing is you assign that in the tender evaluation criteria, you are saying, okay, The project controls manager with 15 years of experience, a construction manager with 20 years of experience, a commercial manager with 10 years of experience. Like that, when you're saying, at the end of the day, what you're saying is you're giving marks in the technical evaluation criteria. You are giving marks to these particular people, so that the contractor's position, relative position pertaining to their technical submission will go up or down, right? So the inclusion of the key personnel as a defined term has now strengthened the necessity of that one, okay? Has now reinforced the requirement of that one within this particular text, okay? And the other thing which I needed to highlight here is it says the contractor's personnel other than the contractor's representative. So that means the project manager is not a key personnel. He is a key personnel, but here in this particular definition, it says the positions of the contractor's personnel other than the contractor's representative. So you keep him supreme, you keep him up, right? Because the contractor's representative is the person who is representing the contractor, right? And then it says that are stated in the specification. Once again, please understand, you remember that in one of the previous slides I told you, when you are saying specified in the contract, you can insert in else anywhere within the contract. So rather than that, what it says is please state in the specification. So you have an exercise to do if you are really interested in researching about this FIDIC 2017 version. Um, Identify the particular term which is called stated in the specification. Let me just highlight for the benefit of all. This particular terminology which is called stated in the specification, if you have a text searchable version of your standard form of contract, uh, group them all together and identify this particular requirement in the standard form of contract has to be inserted within the specification, isn't it? So you can challenge the engineer, you can ask the engineer, if it is had not been included within the specification, it's not to have a grudge with the engineer or something like that, but in order to be specific, in order to be sure about the requirement, okay, you can say that it is stated in the specification. uh, Please show me where in the specification that you can show that. Now, for example, FIDIC 2017 version has inserted certain clauses which needed to be changed. We are going to talk about it in very detailed manner in our next session, related to the building information modeling, because we all knew that we are talking about the tangible documents, isn't it? We are signing a contract, we are issuing letter of acceptance, and then when we are issuing variations, normally the engineer's signature should be there, all these things. Now, with the advent of the building information modeling, lot of subclauses contained within the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version needed to be amended if you are using BIM. But the good news is the guideline has been given by the FIDIC in 2017 version, right? So that is a good thing that we are going to discuss within our next session as well. Then it comes to the clause 7, the manner of execution. Okay. Then this manner of execution, when we are talking about that one, uh, contractor has to think about four aspects. Number one is called the supply. Number two is called the installation. Number three is called testing and commissioning. Number four is called the repair. So normally within the contract period, which I'm talking is from the date of issue of the letter of acceptance until the issue of the performance certificate, the contractor may have to do one or more of these tasks to the benefit, for the benefit of the proper functioning of the project, right? If it is a building or a bridge or a tower or a plant or something like that, chemical plant or a recycling plant, You need to do one or more of these activities within this particular period which is stipulated, right? So this manner of execution, even though the subclause signifies the same, by looking at this superficially at a glance, you cannot see any change which has happened here, right? So what you are seeing on your left hand side is FIDIC 1999 version. What you are seeing on your right hand side is the FIDIC 2017 version, right? So when I'm explaining this into regarding this one, I have to tell you that there is a Google Classroom which I have already created. Those who are joining here today, who have not joined that particular Google Classroom, please send an email to the email address which I'm giving at the end of the presentation, which is ricsonthego@gmail.com, so that you can be registered in this classroom, because this presentation will be parked in that particular classroom only. We will not be sending it through any email mode or something like that. Okay, and that is about it, right? And then you're talking about this manner of execution. There is a change which has occurred from the Excel with the insertion or the inclusion of the FIDIC 2017 version. Okay. Now, before going into this particular subclause, look at the bottom part of this particular slide. It says in the FIDIC 1999 version, plant means apparatus, machinery, and vehicles intended to form or forming part of the permanent works. But on the other hand side, on your right hand side, you can see there are a lot of additions. It says plant means apparatus, equipment. Now it may ring a bell to you. Remember when we were talking about the employer's equipment, we were talking about the same thing, right? So likewise, plant means the apparatus, equipment, machinery, and vehicles, right? Then it says including any components. What do you mean by that? Now, for example, if you are talking about a tower crane, right? A part of a tower crane can be considered as including any component, right? Whether on the site, right? Whether on the site or otherwise allocated to the contract, uh, and intended to form or forming part of the permanent works, right? Therefore, a tower crane cannot be considered as a plant because it is not forming part of the permanent works. I have cleared that particular confusion which may have come to your mind due to the provision of constructional plant. This talks about equipment or machinery which will become permanent works. Now you might be thinking, how come vehicles become permanent works, part of the permanent works? Now, for example, if you are talking about, let's say, recycling plant. Okay, a recycling plant has got certain wheel mounted, motor driven carriers, right? So that can also be considered as plant, because at the end of the day the contractor leaves that behind once he or she is completing the project. So when you are talking about something like a chemical processing plant, or when you are talking about something like a like a station, the space station has got certain vehicles, right? Wheeled vehicles, which becomes part of the permanent works. So that you need to understand what is the difference between those two. But the insertion of the second green colored portion which I am showing here, whether on the site or otherwise allocated to the contract. That is important, right? Sometimes it may not be within the site. Now, especially the typical example would be off-site prefabrication, right? You know, when you go to the definition of the word site, it says very clearly, site is the place where the permanent works are going to be done. But notwithstanding to that, there is an additional phrase which says, or any designated place by the employer, it can also called as a site, because if you are talking about a project which needs lot of prefabrication, prefabricated units, you know, the more substantial number of laborers, substantial number of machinery, are also on that particular place, right? However, when you're talking about constructing something, some machine which is required to be installed at site as part of the works, a typical example would be uh, a recycling plant. It is a very huge machine that is to be done. So that can also be considered as part of the permanent works whenever there is a place which is allocated for in the contract as well. Now we will look into that similar subclause in subclause 7.1, which is called the manner of execution, right? Then it says the contractor shall carry out the manufacture of plant and production and manufacture of the materials. See, when it talks about the word plant, it has been added with the verb manufacture. And when you talk about the materials, it has been added with the word production and manufacture. But when you look into the right hand side of your text, it says supply, installation, testing, commissioning, and repair of plant. Then it says production, manufacture, supply, and testing of materials. It has been enriched with lot of words pertaining to what I have told you in the beginning: supply, installation, testing, commissioning, and repair. Now you can see the material has not got anything to do with repair. Okay, material has not got anything to do with testing and commissioning, but it has something to do with production. It has something to do with supply. So you can understand now the contractor's obligation has now been further reinforced or further explained to clear any ambiguity, because the contractor can sometimes come up and say, no, I'm not I have to carry out only the manufacture of the plant. So, it is, you know, that there is an implied meaning that when you manufacture the plant, you are, when you are executing the works, that means you are definitely, you are doing the installation, testing, and commissioning. But in order to have more clarity, okay, in order to have more clarity, FIDIC New Red Book has sort of expanded the horizons of this particular definitions, particular detailing, right? Then it comes to one of the key elements in this particular presentation, which is called the concurrent delay. It says you delay, I delay, and the delay is critical. Whose fault is that one? But unfortunately, when you see the new Oman conditions of contract, which was issued in 2019, right, it talks about something which may be questionable. It says in a concurrent delay situation, the extension of time will not be given to the contract. Right now, there may be certain particular conditions which can be included within that one, right? Because the FIDIC version, if you go to the FIDIC version about a concurrent delay, and the internationally accepted standard is that if you delay, if I delay, and if the delay is critical, you and I will get the time. You will get the time, definitely, right? But not the cost. So this is what exactly is given in this one. There is no provision within subclause 8.4, because the 8.4 and 8.5 are two different. If you go to FIDIC 1999 version, with the inclusion of this advanced warning provision and all, the subclause has been switched from 8.4 to 8.5. Okay, there is no provision specifically expressly mentioning about the concurrent delay, right? There are certain places which talks about this in an indirect way. However, if you refer to the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, the subclause 8.5 expressly states within the fourth paragraph, if a delay caused by a matter which is the employer's responsibility is concurrent with a delay caused by a matter which is the contractor's responsibility, the contractor's entitlement to EOT shall be assessed in accordance with the rules and procedures stated in special provisions. Within brackets, it says, if not stated as appropriate, taking due regard to all relevant circumstances. This is the first time in the history of FIDIC they referred to the SCL protocol, which is called Society of Construction Laws Protocol. But then you might be challenging this particular statement, saying SCL protocol number 1 was issued in 2002, and in 2017 was the second version which was issued. So FIDIC did not have the opportunity to mention anything which has not been issued. True. However, before the advent of the first version of the um, Society of Construction Laws Delay and Disruption Protocol, there were certain set of documents, certain rules and regulations which has been issued by them from time to time. But FIDIC did not expressly mention about a thing as such. Now, if you see the special provisions, it suggests, it does not specifically mention in the standard form of contract, okay? Because that discretion has been given to the employer to choose either the SCL protocol or any other protocol which may be equivalent to that one. So if you are talking about SCL protocol, that is called the Society of Construction Law Protocol, you can easily identify how an delay analysis can be done, and how the delay analysis can be, the methods of delay analysis. They talk about 6 types of delay analysis methods, right? So likewise, it is very clearly mentioned about as to how these particular how seriously FIDIC has taken this concurrent delay situation into effect. Because in the history, there are a lot of instances wherein the people were not clear about the concurrent delay situation. What needs to be adhered to? People will say standard practice, people will say best practice, but somebody will challenge and ask, where in the contract it says? Okay, so when somebody challenges as such, there is no answer to give. Now the FIDIC has reinforced that with this particular insertion. So this is what is all about the concurrent delay, right? The concurrent delay, I don't have to explain that to you. Most of you know about this. But this is actually taken from the SCL protocol, right? This is SCL protocol, the second version, which was issued in 2017, right? SCL protocol 2017 version issued this one, uh, exactly mentioning what is meant by that one. It says true concurrent delay is the concurrence of 2 or more delay events at the same time. It is the same thing which is given in the FIDIC 2017 version in the definition, right? And then it says one, an employer's risk event. Now then it talks about employer's risk event, okay? The other, a contractor's risk event. So these are the 2 words which has been used in this one, and the effects of which are felt at the same time, okay? So that means during a particular time frame, during a particular time period, the effects of the contractor's risk event and the employer's risk event has to be uh, happening, right? For concurrent delay to exist, each of the employer's risk events and the contractor's risk event must be an effective cause of delay. It must be an effective cause of delay of to completion, right? Where the contractor's delay to completion occurs or has an effect concurrently with the employer delay to completion. The contractor's concurrent delay should not reduce an EOT due, right? This is what the concurrent delay situation has been given as per the SCL protocol. So it is very situational, case by case. You can discuss about that, right? Then we are going to talk about the subclause 9, right? Subclause 9 is talking about the tests on completion, right? Now, the tests on completion, it says insufficient competence. So sorry, that I think this is not the correct one. The test on completion is about what is the change which has occurred in the test on completion is a very important thing in the timeline. What you are seeing on your left hand side is the 1999 version of FIDIC Red Book. What you are seeing on the right hand side is the 2017 version of FIDIC Red Book. Right now, in the tests on completion, you can see the red arrow. It says the tests on completion shall be completed and signified by the issue of taking over certificate. Right? Issue of taking over certificate and date of completion are not the same. FIDIC identified that. So, in practical terms, in the more pragmatic and effective manner, tests on completion has to be completed with the date of completion, not with the issue of the taking over certificate. So, this particular anomaly has been rectified like the base date by the FIDIC 2017 version if you see the timeline. So that is the biggest change which has occurred in these tests on completion. So wherever the defined term date of completion is appearing within the subclauses, you can see that it is linked with the tests on completion, the date of the tests on completion. And wherever in the FIDIC 1999 version, the issue of taking our certificate is coupled with tests on completion. So the more practical approach, the more realistic approach has been adopted in FIDIC 2017 version. Then we are coming to the last part of today's session, close 10, taking over by parts, right? Once again, this taking over by parts is all about what has been given in the FIDIC Red Book 2017 version, right? Previously, it was indicated as taking over parts of the works, and now it says taking over parts, right? There is not much difference, but there is one thing that you need to keep within your mind: the insertion of a subclause which is called, right? Subclause 3.7.3 time limits. Okay, that is there within the FIDIC 2017 version, and you can see it says the engineer shall give the notice of agreement if agreement is achieved within 42 days of within such other time limit as may be proposed by the engineer, and then it goes on and on. It talks about the time limits about the notice of agreements, which we are going to be discussing more, right? When it comes into play, when it is coupled with the extension of time clause, right? Once we are going to talk about the notices, we will be discussing about this particular area within the next session itself. However, what you can see is that taking over by parts can be based on the sectional completion or can be based on the uh, partial completion, right? So partial completion is normally not stipulated within the contract, but the sectional completion is stipulated, right? The insertion of these time limits, right? The insertion of these time limits has strengthened the taking over by parts. The process has been more robust. This is the only thing which I can tell you about this taking over by parts. Right now, other than that, most of the things are there. You know that whenever there are two segments, two sections which needs to be handed over, the liquidated damages, okay, get proportionately reduced. If you hand over some portion of a project, your liability towards the liquidated damages will be reduced proportionately to the value of the works that you have handed over. This is what this particular subclause is talking about, right? So that is it from today's point of view. And thank you very much for listening for today's session. And if you have any questions, now this the open. The forum is open for you. Uh, And the other thing which I wanted to tell you, the Mindful Contract Administrator has decided to continue this free webinar series on monthly basis, and the second session will be somewhere within the third week of March, right? We are exploring the opportunities to identify this time limit, which has been set forth by the Google Meet, because this is a free facility that we are getting from Google Meet. Uh, until 31st of March, they will be giving this 1 hour facility, and then after 31st of March, I think there will be now it is more than 1 hour facility has been given. So, however, we will facilitate the requirement, so it will you won't be facing any problems in this regard, right? So this Google Classroom room platform has been created in view of accommodating a more robust or more efficient communication between you and me, right? So it will be something recurrent. So if you are willing to continue with this series of lectures, you can remain within that classroom. We will be uh, we will be communicating to you time to time about what are the free seminars that we are going to hold. Okay, I hope that you all are tired, right? That you have spent about 2 hours in this regard. If that is the case, that actually we will be having a lengthy Q&A session after the second session, right? So whatever the questions that you may come across, the presentation will be uploaded in the classroom itself. So please do send an email to this particular email ID, ricsonthego@gmail.com, in order to accommodate you if you have not been accommodated into the classroom, right? Okay, then if that is the case, we can conclude the session and wrap up the session. Have a good night, and we will meet very soon. Thank you so much.